Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're doing an ANNIHIATION deck profile. So I'm really excited for this one because this deck actually just got some insane support from Lightning Overdrive. This deck is absolutely crazy now. We got a new Link 1 for the deck, we got a new Searcher for the deck. This deck just kind of turned on its head and is just absolutely crazy. I wouldn't be surprised that after the list, this deck is going to be a tier 2 deck with all the stuff that happened on the list, and even could potentially sneak in and take some, tops. This deck is really amazing. It's really fun to be able to play around with, and it's just an overall crazy good deck. So without further ado, guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can come part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name, description, every single video, getting a signed card to the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Picari. Picari is an absolutely crazy card for this deck. What this card does is if this card is normal or special summon, you get to add 1 copy of an eye, spell, or trap from your deck to your hand, and then you can also target 1 ANNIHIATION or monster you control, and its level becomes level 4, which helps you out a lot for making rank 4 plays in this deck. We then played 3 copies of Achichi. Achichi has the ability that if this card is normal or special summon, you get to add 1 level 4 or lower ANNIHIATION or monster from your deck to your hand, except another copy of itself. And at the start of the damage step, when your Cyverse monster battles, you can banish this card from the graveyard to destroy that monster you control, which can come in handy in some circumstances. We then played 2 copies of Doyon. Doyon is also a really good card. You just really needed a 2 of in this deck. You can get away with 1, but I like 2. If this card is normal or special summon, then you get to target 1 ANNIHIATION monster in the graveyard and add it back to your hand. And if this card is sent to the graveyard as a material for a link summon of a Cyverse monster, you get to target 1 eye, spell, or trap in your graveyard and add it back to your hand, which is a really great effect just to be able to get one of your spells and traps back to your hand. It comes in really handy. We then play a single copy of Bururu. Bururu is a tuner monster, and it has a really neat effect that basically when it's normal summon or special summon, you can send an ANNIHIATION monster from your deck to the graveyard, and if this card is sent to the graveyard as a material for the synchro summon of a Cyverse monster, you can target 1 monster in your graveyard that was used as synchro material and re-special summon that monster to your side of the field, so it can essentially become a 1-card synchro summon, which is pretty good. We then play a single copy of Doshin. I like 1 copy of Doshin because with the new spell card, you can actually really quickly get to this card by just revealing Transcode Talker. So this card is really handy in this deck as a 1-of because it instantly special summons itself to your side of the field. The only effect that really matters on this now, because you don't play the fusion spell anymore, that if you control an ANNIHIATION monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. That's the real only effect because it's a great extender. I play a single copy of Danmari. Danmari is really good because Danmari has a really neat effect that when this card declares an attack involving, or when an attack is declared involving your ANNIHIATION monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. If you do, negate that attack. And then while you control a Link 6 monster, which I believe this is the only deck in the entire game that has a Link 6, you can quick effect banish this card from your field or graveyard and then target 1 face-up card your opponent controls and negate its effects until the end of the turn, which is a great effect just as a 1-of in this deck. It's probably the weakest of the new support, but I still like it as a 1-of. We then play a single copy of Mathmech Edition. Mathmech Edition is a really good card in this deck. It's a great addition to the deck. I'll just see myself out. But what this card does is it's a really great card to help you out with a lot of the plays because it can special summon itself from the hand and it's searchable off your Mathmech XZ monster. It's really easy to grab this card from your deck to your hand as an additional extension play for this particular deck, and it's really good because it lets you target a face of monster you control. You can't special summon from the extract for the rest of the turn except for Cyverse, which is pretty much all we're summoning anyways. And then after you do that, you special summon this card, and then the targeted monster gains 1,000 attack, which is really good. We then play a single copy of the ANNIHIATION Shield. ANNIHIATION Shield is really good too. That the first time each Cyverse monster you control would be destroyed by a card effect, each turn it is not destroyed, and you only use the following effect this card once per turn. That you can target a Cyverse monster you control, negate its effects, and if you do, you special summon this card from your hand. And if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. That target's unaffected, or you can target 1 face-up monster you control, and that target is unaffected by your opponent's card effects until the end of the turn, which is really good just to be able to have you an additional monster that you can special summon from your hand, and it is a great extender. For the hand traps, we're playing 3 copies of Nibiru, because the Nibiru is just really nice to throw against our opponent, because you don't want to get hit in this deck and have a really unbreakable board against you. So the Nibiru is really good, because basically you're just kind of summoning a Chi-Chi and a Picari, and then everything else is extenders for the deck, and so you can have a lot of room for hand traps in this deck. So the Nibirus come in really handy, because you can just give them to your opponent, and you get a Nibiru monster on your side of the field, and then they get a token to be able to kind of board wipe them if you do get pushed to go second. We play 3 copies of Ash Blossom, because the 3 Ash Blossom just kind of stop your opponent from all sorts of different crazy plays. And then we play 2 copies of Ghost Bell. Now, I will say, with all of these slots, you can kind of use your own judgment for hand traps. You could play 3 DD Crows, 3 Lancias in the place of the Nibiru. You could play 3 Effect Veilers. You could play 2 copies of Lancia over the Ghost Bells. It kind of comes down to what you're playing against and what the meta shapes up to be. But for the current moment, I'm kind of liking this lineup where I'm playing the 2 Ghost Bells, the 3 Ash, and the 3 Nibiru. It comes in really handy. And the Ghost Bell basically stops your opponent from doing graveyard stuff. The Ash basically stops your opponent from doing deck stuff. So basically these both come in really handy. The reason I'm playing the Ghost Bells is because I anticipate Drytron being a problem later on. So I really feel like the copy of the Ghost Bells are going to be really helpful, and they help against Eldritch a little bit as well. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Harpy's Feather Duster. The Harpy's Feather Duster comes in really handy, just a back row wipe, because you don't want to get back row. You don't want to have to deal with a lot of back row in this deck. So this card helps out a lot just to stop that. Play a single copy of Call by the Grave. You don't want to get hit with a hand trap all that often. You can play through hand traps, but you don't want to get hit by one. It's really unfortunate when you do, but you have a lot of extenders in this deck, so it's okay if you do get hit by like one. We play a single copy, or 2 maybe. You can probably play through like 2 when I play through this deck. You play a single copy of Monster Reborn. You play a couple of different cards that are Monster Reborn, but you play the 1 Monster Reborn itself, because this card is a great extender for the deck. You play 2 copies of I'd Reborn. I Reborn is really good because you get to target an Ignister monster in the graveyard and special summon it. And also you cannot special summon monster rest turn after you resolve this card, except for Cyverse, which is not that big of a deal. And when an attack is declared involving 2 monsters, you manage this card from your graveyard and 1 card from your hand, and then target one of your eye, spell, or trap that's banished in your graveyard, except another copy itself, and add it back to your hand, which is kind of a really weird effect that you have to involve in a battle to banish this card and a card from your hand to be able to add an eye, spell, or trap back, which is really weird, but it comes in handy sometimes. We then play 2 copies of Ignister Island. Island is really good because Island has the ability that if you control no monsters in your main monster zone, you can special summon 1 level 4 lower Ignister monster from your hand, but for the rest of the turn, you cannot special summon monsters with the same original attribute by this effect of an Ignister AI land. And also, you cannot special summon monsters except for Cyverse monsters, which is, again, not that big of a deal in this deck. And if this card is in your graveyard, you can banish an Ignister monster from your graveyard and set this card, which is really good. It's really easy to search with the new copy of the Link 1. It's really easy to grab out of the deck. But I do like 2 of it, because you don't need 3. 3 just clogs now with the copy of Dark Infant, but you just play the 2 because it's easy to search. We then play 3 copies of I Meet You, which I think is probably the cutest card in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I love this card. This is actually the reason I picked this deck back up again, was because of this particular card. I've been playing it on and off with the new support, but then they released this card, and I was like, aw. Every time I draw this card, it kind of warms my heart. And I love this card. It's just really cool because what it does is you reveal 1 Cyverse monster with 2300 attack in your extra deck or in your hand, and then you get to add 1 Ignister monster with the same attribute from your deck to your hand. And then during the end phase of this turn, you take 2300 damage, and if you did not special summon the revealed monster or a monster with the same name, and after you resolve this effect, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except for Cyverse, which is, again, not that big of a deal. This card actually single-handedly makes me want to watch Vrains, and if you guys think I should, definitely comment down below, because I am thinking about watching Vrains. I haven't watched it before, and I really think I might. We then play 3 copies of Cyanide Mining, because it is a primarily Cyverse deck, and I really think that this card is a great card in this deck. It's just an additional searcher. You send a card from your hand to the graveyard to add a level 4 or lower Cyverse monster from your deck to your hand. So this card's really a great card just to get you into some extending plays. So that's it for the spells, guys, let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're just playing a couple of traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. The Infinite Impermanences come in really handy because you can just throw them against your opponent to stop a monster effect. You can set them to stop monster effects, which is still pretty good. It's never a dead card, which is just really great about this card. If you don't control any cards, you can activate it the first turn. If you get pushed to go second. If you go first, however, you can set it on your field and then activate it later. So it's never really dead, so it's great. We then play 3 copies of Solemn Strike, because Solemn Strike just stops monster effects. This deck does need a little bit of protection, which is why you play all the hand traps. Another card that I thought about playing over the Nibiru was Solemn Judgment as well. I almost played Solemn Judgment over the 3 copies in Nibiru, so that is another option for you guys, because you always have half to pay. So you can play 3 Judgments on top of the 3 strikes, but I felt like it was a little bit scary to play both of them, because you run into the scenario that you might not have the 15 once you pay twice. You're going to be down to like 500 on a copy of Judgment, but by the time you use a Judgment and a Strike, you should be winning at that game state. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 new copies of the Link 1. This card is fantastic in this deck. I love this card. What this card does is, like, it fixes a lot of the problems the deck had with getting to AI or to I-land. And what this card does is, if this card is Link summoned, you get to add 1 Ad-Ignister I-land from your deck to your hand. And then when a Cyverse monster with 2300 original attack activates its effects, quick effects, you can move this card in the monster zone to another zone that that monster points to. And then also you can change this card's attribute. You can literally make this card a divine monster, which is really cool. I like that. I just usually call divine for the giggles of it, because I think it's hilarious. We then play a single copy of the Arrival Cyverse Ad-Ignister. This card is the boss monster of the deck. It is the like full-fledged version of the Dark Infant. And what this card does is you can control only 1 of this card. And the original attack, this card becomes 1,000 times the link materials used in this card's link summon, and it's unaffected by other card effects. And then once per turn, you can target 1 other monster on the field and destroy it. And if you do, you can special summon an Ad-Ignister token to your side of the field whose zone this card points to, which it has plenty of zones. Like, pick from the 6 that it has. We then play a single copy of Firewall Dark Fluid. Dark Fluid does come out every so often. I usually go for the Arrival, but this card does come out. It's not as like turboed to this one because I don't play the Ritual or the Fusion anymore, so you don't get as many counters on this card, but it still comes up. But basically this card just gets a bunch of counters, and for every counter on it, it goes up by 2,500 when you swing, which can get really big really fast. And also you can quick effect whenever your opponent activates a monster effect, you can remove a counter from this card and negate the activation if you do destroy that card, which is pretty good. Or you just negate the activation, don't destroy it. And this card activated between this card's attack declaration, you can make another attack in a row, which is pretty good just to give it additional attacks. I love this card, but I don't summon it quite as much as I used to in this deck. We then play a single copy of Access Code. Now, I do summon Access Code all the time compared to Dark Fluid, and Dark Fluid is really good, but Access Code is just a little bit easier to summon in this deck with a little less requirements. It's really great to summon this card because you can get all sorts of different attributes in the graveyard, and you can pop a bunch of cards on the field. And just play 1 copy of Dark Templar. Dark Templar is, if a monster is a special summon to a zone this card points to, then you can special summon as many level 4 or lower Ad-Ignister monsters from your graveyard to zones this card points to, but have their effects negated. And then when this card destroys a monster by battle, you can special summon 1 Cyverse monster from your graveyard. So basically this card is a instantaneous when you summon it at Arrival, which is really great. It comes out like ridiculously easy because you just summon this card and then you basically can link away one of the tokens or one of the monsters on your side of the field to go into a copy of the infant, and then the infant will go, or this card will go off. You move the infant over and then you special summon 3, call Divine on the infant, and then it just goes into all those different plays, which is really cool. 1 copy of Fire Phoenix. Fire Phoenix is not the greatest card, but you just play it as a target to add a Chi-Chi. 2 copies of Transcode. Transcode is great. You can reveal it in your extra deck to be able to grab the Doyon, which is really good. Basically it just revives stuff from the graveyard, which is a great effect. We play a single copy of Update Jammer because it can give your access code multiple attacks. Splash Mage, because Splash Mage is great because it lets you target 1 Cyverse in the graveyard and again special summon it to zone this card, or just special summon in defense position that's effects are negated. We play a single copy of Cyverse Wit Kid. Wit Kid comes in really handy to add your copy, or this card is link summon. And this card is summoned if a monster is a special summon to a zone this card points to while you control this card. Then you can manage the Cyverse monster from your graveyard to add a Cyverse tuner from your deck to your hand, so you can get your Baruru really fast. Play a single copy of the site where we play a single copy of the Math Mech XZ. This card, for the 2 effect, you just detach 2 materials from this card to add a Math Mech card from your deck to your hand, which is the addition. We play a single copy of Light Dragon. Light Dragon is really good too because it gets you additional pops, and you can reveal it to add your copy of Pakari from deck to hand, which is really good. And then Wind Pegasus because you can grab Baruru from the deck. And now I did think about dropping the Math Mech cards for a copy of Cyverse Quantum, which you can do if you want to drop that, and drop the Math Mech in the deck for an additional like upstart or something like that, or another hand trap, and then change this out for a Cyverse Quantum if you want to go a little bit more budget in the deck. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really fun deck to be able to play around with. It's probably my favorite, hands down my favorite of the all of like the Cyverse decks. This card is just really, really good. I love the way that the deck plays. The new Link 1 helps out a lot of the problems that the deck had to be able to grab the field spell, and in moving and changing attribute is just really good because to summon out your rival, it just needs different attributes. And so the deck just really is great. Like, I love the way it plays. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon in the description below, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.